I tried to conceive for 8 years. And it really was this slow progression of coming back to myself. And instead of reacting the traditional, conventional, cultural way of shame and blame and something's wrong with me and need to fix me by trying to perfect me, I really had to learn how to respond to myself with compassion in even my darkest moments. You basically try every diet out there. You go to acupuncture, you hire a naturopath, you go see tarot card readers, you go for hypnosis. You try pretty much everything in the world.
What does the future of fertility look like?
Ooh, this.
Spenser Brassard is here to help you get pregnant. She was able to do so after trying for 8 years, and now she has her own best-selling book titled Fertile Ground, as well as over 500,000 downloads of her podcast, also titled Fertile Ground. It's a pleasure to welcome Spenser today to the Heal Within podcast. Spenser, 70% of women become pregnant 1 year after working with you. What is in the water?
Well, that's what I'm here to talk about, right? That's what we're here for, is to learn what is this missing piece on this fertility journey and how we can get so far away from what actually is really quite innate and within us. But I don't know about you, Jessica, like when we have been so conditioned in our culture to, when we are faced with a challenge or a catalytic event in any way, we have this conditioning that teaches us to look outside of ourselves, to go to Google, right? Google, and then it's just like, oh my God, that made me feel so much worse. I am and confused, right? We have information overload right now at the tips of our fingers, which inundates our brains with information that we try our best to filter through, particularly when it comes to the fertility journey. I mean, there are millions of things that you could do to try to increase your fertility. And we automatically think that the more I do, the more I'll increase my chances. But my philosophy is less is so much more. Because when we are doing less and when we're tuning into actually what makes us feel, rested and connected, we are doing what we are doing with so much more presence and so much more aliveness and creativity, which ultimately are extensions and characteristics of fertility, right? So let's talk about what is in the water inside of my new book, Fertile Ground.
So what is the number one mistake that women are making when trying to become pregnant?
Blaming themselves. I think that a lot of people assume that because I'm a mind-body coach and I'm a fertility mindset coach, that, that comes with, oh, it's because you are the problem. And so we need to change your mind in order for you to get pregnant. And that could not be farther from the truth in my eyes. I believe that through patriarchal thinking and conditioning, we blame and shame ourselves far too often when challenges arise in our lives, right? We go, oh, it's because of me, particularly about a woman. I don't know about you, Jessica, but I grew up like believing that having a baby was the most important thing you could do in your life. And so if that's not happening as quickly as you would like, of course you're going to blame yourself and you're going to question your worth and you're going to question your body. And that's part of this process. But my fertility journey for me was a life-changing opportunity to respond to something as quote unquote shameful as the infertility journey. I had to change that narrative from blame and shame, it's my fault, there's something wrong with me, to this is an opportunity, this is a catalytic event for me to respond to myself, potentially for the first time in my life, or at least since I was a child, with the utmost compassion for all of the emotions that I'm experiencing right now, whether that's failure, right? Sadness, grief, pain. How do we respond to ourselves in our darkest moments? Let's just think about this. We're dealing with a difficult, and when I say difficult, what I really mean is uncomfortable, because at worst, what an emotion is uncomfortable. Let's add a layer of shame on top of that, right? Which is, I shouldn't be feeling this way. So not only is it an uncomfortable emotion, but then let's add the layer of shame to make it feel 1,000 times worse, and really create the suppression or the repression of this emotion just wanting to move through you, that is truly just asking to be felt and experienced, that just wants a seat at the table for a brief moment in this life. And so for me, it really was a progression, because I tried to conceive for 8 years. And it really was this slow progression of coming back to myself. And instead of reacting the traditional, conventional, cultural way of shame and blame and something's wrong with me and need to fix me by trying to perfect me, I really had to learn how to respond to myself with compassion in even my darkest moments. And there's a whole chapter inside of my book, actually, Fertile, which is devoted to the emotion of pain, right? And so we're programmed to run away from it. We're programmed that we're not safe in this sensation. But I learned that the heart, we really want to, when it comes to fertility, we really want to lead with an open heart. In Chinese medicine, there's a vein that goes from the heart to the womb space. And so if you have an open heart, you have an open womb. And so, of course, we try to control and prevent these emotions, and we just try to stay high vibe in order to attract a baby. But in order to feel the deep pleasure that you believe your baby will bring you, I believe you have to also experience pain, because I believe the heart is the birthplace of both of those sensations. And you can't just close yourself off to one. You have to be willing to experience both. And I think that the listeners here will learn that if we're able to slow down our lives enough to allow for whatever wants to arise within us, that actually is incredibly beneficial to whatever it is that we're wanting to create, as well as finding joy in this moment, finding joy in our lives now. So it's kind of a win-win.
I want to go a little bit deeper into your story. You tried to get pregnant for 8 years, and I know you mentioned TTC. Could you explain what that is, and then what you went through in those 8 years?
Yeah. So trying to conceive, that's what TTC means. If you've been trying to conceive for a while, you know exactly what that means. There's lots of fun acronyms. I don't know if they're fun. There's lots of acronyms when you're on the fertility journey. So yeah, like event, when it didn't happen in the first few months, you're discouraged, but you're like, okay, so you wait for a year. And that's when the online world, reiterates to you that, okay, you got to get some testing done, figure out what's going on here. And my husband and I were both diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which left a lot of answers, unanswered questions. So we took the very traditional westernized approach to fertility, which is you basically try every diet out there. You go to acupuncture, you hire a naturopath, you go see tarot card readers, you go for hypnosis, you try pretty much everything in the world that you can. But the problem is I was still so attached to needing a baby in order to be happy. Like I was doing all of the quote unquote right things, which a lot of people trying to conceive are, and on any type of healing journey are. Like they're like, you know, a lot of people are confused. I'm doing all the right things. Why isn't it working? But I was still so attached. I still believed that the baby was the only thing that would bring me everything that I wanted. And so I was never really receiving everything that I wanted in my life and could control, like moments of deep pleasure, or moments of a nap in the middle of the afternoon, or you know, a career that I found really empowering. I just put that all on hold until the baby came, right? I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing any of that adventure. I'm just going to wait for the baby. And I think that's because we don't believe we're worthy of those things. We're like, I'm not there yet. So I'm just going to keep going, 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 doing, forcing with that masculine type energy until it happens. And, you know, pressure from the outside world doesn't help, right? Everyone's like, when are you going to have a baby? Time is ticking, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And that is even more of a reason for you to just get pregnant, right? Even more pressure to try and make it happen, only leading you deeper into that need versus a happy, healthy desire. So eventually I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I became a life coach, and I was in a beautiful meditation that was guided by the facilitator. And I was like, oh, what kind of coach am I going to be? Like, what can I bring to this world? I was still on the fertility journey, but I didn't think that that was exactly a place to be, being that I hadn't gotten pregnant yet. And she's guiding us in this meditation, and I just could see like thousands, if not millions, of orbs surrounding me, and I could feel it, and my whole, like, my skin just turned into like just goosebumps everywhere, and I could just sense that these were the spirits of babies wanting to find their moms.
Wow.
And I'm just bawling because I'm not like, I don't have a lot of that kind of stuff that happens to me very often in my life. Like, you know, that like I'm not psychic by any means, but that was undeniable. Like that was completely, you could not deny what had happened to me in that beautiful meditation. And so I thought, okay, this is it. This is it. And that's and you know, another interesting point is it's like so many of my answers on my fertility journey came within, not without. And
Mm.
so I became a fertility coach before getting pregnant, which was actually really empowering because, again, it wasn't, I'm going to put this on hold until it happens. It was like, no, I'm not suffering anymore because of so many of the tools I learned becoming a life coach, that I can actually be happy at any point in my life. I don't have to wait for something external to occur in order for me to be okay. And so I wasn't suffering anymore. And I couldn't wait to share that with other women trying to conceive. And to my surprise, people were hiring me, and I was like, okay, cool. We got an actual business here, even though I'm not pregnant yet. But people were wanting to learn how to not suffer, right? How to feel at peace regardless of what happens.
Mm.
And in a way that was really beautiful too, because a lot of women were realizing I didn't, you know, I don't have to wait for the baby in order for me to feel at peace. And that creates detachment again from needing this baby to happen. And it allows you to let go of control, because you can say, I can have what I want in my life right now. I don't have to wait any longer.
Yes.
So, and then women started to get pregnant and that I was coaching, and I was like, holy shit, this actually works. Amazing.
Mm.
Wow. And the momentum had built in my business and also in my personal life. My husband and I, you know, a lot of people say that their marriages crumble with the fertility journey. Ours got closer and closer and more intimate because I had developed such a level of safety in my vulnerability and sharing how I actually felt, that it inadvertently taught my husband to do the same. So it was this
Mm.
incredible connection, not only from an emotional level, but even a sexual level. like, again, given a lot of people trying to conceive, they're like, oh, the sex part sucks. Like everything that you think happens on the fertility journey was the opposite was happening in my life because of the mind body tools that I was incorporating, because of my spiritual connection, and because of how I learned how to show myself so much compassion in even the darkest of times. So eventually, I think it was like 6 years in or 7 years in, and I was like, okay, I feel ready for IVF. I felt really unattached, but also I knew that IVF wouldn't be all for nothing. I think when you go into IVF thinking I'm either going to spend tens of thousands of dollars and get nothing at the end or get a baby, that creates a lot of pressure. But for me, I was like, you know what? IVF is calling me towards it. And I don't know what I'm going to get at the end, but I know I'm going to get something. So I actually set two intentions. One was to get pregnant, of course. And even asking for that when you've been trying to conceive for 7 years is actually quite vulnerable, believe it or not. But two, I said, I want to learn what it means to surrender. I want to learn what this is like. And so I went to this experience, and IVF is incredibly vulnerable, physically, emotionally, mentally. It's a very vulnerable experience, and you have to be very gentle with yourself. And it was pretty sacred, if I'm being totally honest. It was really a sacred spiritual experience, not necessarily in the clinic because it's so medicalized and can feel quite sterile. But I had like a little secret within me that was brewing, and it was beautiful. And so we got pregnant, but we sadly miscarried shortly after. And, again, another layer of grief and pain that I had to process. And we did a frozen embryo transfer a few months after that, which resulted in nothing. But I still had something inside of me that was like, this isn't it. Like, this is the momentum is coming. Like, the momentum is continuing to grow. And at this point, I had really stopped blaming myself. I had just thought, you know what? I don't exactly know like why it's not working. And I let myself not know for maybe the first time. I had really welcomed uncertainty. And so 2 months after that, which I didn't even like, you would think that 8 years trying to conceive, you'd be tracking your cycle, you'd be knowing exactly when your period is supposed to arrive. I was so up in my joy of my life that I had no idea. But I had been spending a lot of time with one of my friends, and she said, hey, I got my period. Did you get yours? I said, no. So it was already a few days after I was supposed to get it. And so I go into my closet and I grab an old pregnancy test, and it lit up like a Christmas tree. And that was my now 4-year-old son. And then a couple years after that, I got pregnant on my first try with my 1.5-year-old son. So
Wow.
it was the best and the worst thing that ever happened to me. But the lessons I learned on my fertility journey, I copy and paste into every other category of my life. And I think that's what's so beautiful when you are able to use your fertility journey to your advantage, for you to see it as an opportunity to grow into the woman that you are meant to be, the woman and the mother that you are meant to be. And that's what it's been for me and so many of my clients. And for the readers of my new book, Fertile Ground, they'll get to see firsthand what this means and what this looks like in real life, which is so important. And that there is a different way to increasing fertility and getting pregnant.
Yes, I love that you talk about copying and pasting that in other areas of your life, because for me, the reason why I got into health has to do with physical symptoms I had, mainly with my skin. That was like the warning light. And so I started looking at diet. And so it's like the stories align so much. I turned to Google, I'm looking at all these experts and blaming myself, and then beating myself up for beating myself up.
Exactly.
But it's all connected. It's like the mind body connection that you talk about so much, which I wanted to talk about more, and I'm sure you share more about it in your book. But how did you get there? Is there how do we strengthen that connection today in today's world?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think that we lead our lives, again, in our culture, to no fault of our own, living primarily from the neck up. So we look at a problem and we analyze the hell out of it with our brains. And our bodies are screaming to be a part of this in lots of different ways, like you said. And it can come in flare-ups, it can come in physical symptoms, or it can come in just being able to, or strong sensations within the body, right? Like being able to connect with your body and know how it feels about a particular choice that you may face in the road. And so the mind-body connection to me means including your body in your life and consulting your body and being with your body. I think that everyone can agree, that sitting inside of your body and actually witnessing your body and your breath and the sensations that arise in your life, whether it's an argument or an amazing party where you're having the best time, or a deep conversation with someone you love, being able to welcome your body part of this process not only brings more presence and richness into our lives and our experience, but it is fertile ground for optimum health. It's like when we're, they all of the gurus say that like our bodies is exactly what connects us to this moment. Our breath, you cannot focus on your breathing and be thinking about something else. And so there's been research done at the Domar Center of Harvard for women, particularly who were struggling to conceive. And they realized that women who used mind-body practices, whether that's meditation or just dropping into your body, being and learning how to process your emotions, slowing down enough to do that, which is also huge. Like when we're racing through life and just listening to the tyrant of our minds, we don't even get a chance to know what's going on inside of our bodies. So, and also social support, right? Being willing to let go of that shame and to share with others exactly how you're experiencing without judgment. This has been shown to increase fertility by up to 55%. And they actually had done studies with this with women in Boston at Harvard. And it's quite remarkable how our bodies know the way. And I know that might be really confusing to someone who is struggling with physical symptoms or whose body isn't doing for them exactly what they want. But I think one fascinating aspect of the mind-body connection is that, I talk about this in my book, is so many of us have a transactional relationship with our bodies, right? You do this, like if like you do this and you do this and you do this, and then I'll like show you love and appreciation, and then I'll take up space in the world.
You can eat that after you work out.
Exactly. And so we're these tyrants do these miracles, right? And particularly for women who are trying to conceive, like you are that spark of light that came about when sperm met egg. Like you are that miracle that you so badly want to create. Yet we're seeing this mechanism as a machine, as opposed to the vessel that it is to call in this life. I think that in order to change that conversation that we have with our bodies, we have to be willing to recognize and witness its presence regardless of its performance. And personally, in my experience with so many of my clients as well, the body loves that. Like if you think about your body as like an actual being, an entity, a consciousness, and you tell it, hey, I know things have been, and I have an actual exercise inside of my book on how exactly to do this, but I know I've been withholding any type of love and admiration from you until this happens. And I just want to let you know that I'm sorry for that. And I love everything that you are. You've been with me the longest. We've been together forever in this life. And I so admire and appreciate that. And just being in that and witnessing that experience in that moment without needing anything else outside of you will put you on a healing trajectory that will shock the heck out of you. Because when we remove that transactional piece, there's a lot of trust that's reestablished in relationships, like any other relationship, right? Imagine being in a relationship with a person and you're just like, nope, not until you do everything I say, and then I'll love you. That would not build intimacy. That would not build trust. That would not build a willingness to feel safe in that relationship. And I'm sorry, we are in this relationship with this body 100% of 100% of the time, at least with our partners. We're not always with them. So it's a really great opportunity, the fertility journey and any healing journey where we're finding ourselves frustrated that our bodies aren't performing or pleasing or perfecting us as much as we'd like, to be willing to sit with it in all that it is and admire its just consciousness and its beingness and its breathing. Like it's breathing, it's moving, it's able to do exactly what you want at any given moment.
What you're saying right now is so powerful. Do you mind if we just take like one moment, and for anyone listening, I want you to wrap your arms around yourself.
Oh, I'd love to. Let's do it.
Hug your body, your left arm, your right arm, squeeze yourself tight and just say, thank you, body. I mean, how often do we not do that? I mean, just pausing and thanking our bodies for everything it does. I love everything that you're talking about right now.
Yeah, but and also not expecting to receive anything in return. Again,
Right?
Like just being in that gratitude. You know, I've been learning about compassion. It's like compassion with transactions is not compassion. Like, I'm doing this for you. Now you owe me. No, just the gratitude, just the love, just the expression of that is huge. I love that you did that.
I wanted to know about birth control. So do you find that prior birth control use plays a role in women having difficulty conceiving?
I haven't had any experience with that, and I haven't seen anything like that. What I have seen with my clients is that birth control tends to put the women that I've worked with, as well as myself, out of touch with our bodies.
Makes sense.
Right. And so we have a 30-day cycle, right? If we are exactly in tune with the moon. We have the new moon and I don't know, the waning, the waxing, and then the full moon. You know, we have all these different phases, and we're meant to have these different phases. This is part of our nature. And I believe each phase and each cycle can be a state in which we listen to what our body needs, whether we're at peak ovulation and we're ready to party and like be up and show up in the world and be seen and that, or are we on day one of our cycle where we're being asked to retreat, we're being asked to feel, we're being asked to come back and reflect on how we're feeling and what we need. So I don't necessarily see it as affecting fertility as much as I see it affecting our connection to our bodies, which I guess in a way can wreak havoc on that connection that we have to our femininity and put us a little bit out of touch with what we need. Right. And so a lot of my work, and I talk about this inside of my book, Fertile Ground, is, you know, I think we all have very specific, unique, and individual needs, but we have a lot of shame about what those needs are. Like, oh, I'm not allowed to ask for that. Oh, I can't do that. That's not okay. Right? Like, so say, for example, you're tired and you want to cancel plans and you want to just hang out and chill by yourself. But we have a lot of shame around that because maybe we've been brought up to be people pleasers and, oh, well, I'll let that other person down, or what will they think of me if I cancel, or, how will that change things? And so we ruminate on and convince ourselves to reject what it is that we need in order to feel connected to our bodies and to our beingness and to our spirits. And I love how each phase of our cycle, it kind of changes and shifts, and it allows for our needs to kind of morph and adjust. And the sooner we are able to ask for what we need and ask for what we want and desire, even if it moves beyond food, water, and shelter, like that, like we are allowed to feel pleasure and desire before getting pregnant, before getting mothers. Because if you are withholding that experience of pleasure and rest and adventure while on the fertility journey, can you imagine how much harder it's going to be to give yourself those things when you actually become a mother?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like this fertility journey is the most incredible fertile ground for you to incorporate the mother and the lifestyle that you want to be and become right now. Because if you think it's hard right now to ask for what you want and need, oh, you just wait.
Yeah, embody the version of you who is already pregnant. What would she be doing? How would she feel?
Yes, be her now. That was one of my big messages that I would often receive in meditation. Is like, be her now. Be that mother that you want to become. Do you want to put everything on hold until things happen? And then we all know how that works. You just continue putting it on hold and hold and hold and hold and hold. And then
Yeah,
chances of it moving forward are slimmer as years go
right.
by. So it's like just taking your hand off of that hold button and learning to feel worthy of that life that you want right now. And sometimes we don't, like, we have this vision of what we want, obviously, but sometimes our bodies are asking for different things, right? We have this vision of travel and adventure, which I love and I encourage my clients to do. But sometimes the body is in a state of, you know what, I just really need to recharge. I really need to, disconnect and come inward and back to myself. So even just a simple practice of asking what your body needs every day is going to increase your mind-body connection tremendously.
I love that question. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. And it's usually very simple. It's like, I want some water.
right.
I just want to sit down for 5 minutes and I don't want to think about anything. I don't want to try, right? Think about how much we try in our day to day. Like, I just want to be in a state of not trying, not efforting. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about your book a little more, Fertile Ground. What are some
Yeah.
key takeaways or messages from your book that you hope readers will embrace?
Mm. There is another way to your baby. So I think we get really caught up in trying to discover and find that one narrow path. It is to whatever it is that you want, right? We have this like, oh no, I have to hit that perfect one narrow path. And so at the first chapter, I open it wide open to there are thousands of different paths that are going to lead you to that perfect, healthy baby. And so I teach women trying to conceive that the goal is actually not to look outside of you to figure out which one you should do, more so which one do you feel connected to, which one is calling to you. And it's funny, I think we want like the Google Maps breakdown of where we're supposed to go. But I think we all have this built-in baby compass, and it's designed to only just show you the next right step. And so if we can learn to listen to our minds and bodies enough, which I teach you exactly how to do inside of this book, you will know what that next step is. And you will, in that, you begin to build an immense level of self-trust to know that, like, oh, okay, so if I know the way, and if I'm the one who's guiding this, then I can actually sit in a lot of safety, knowing I can trust myself. And like physiologically, safety is what is nervous system regulation, right? It's what takes us out of fight or flight. The only reason why we go to fight or flight or fawn or freeze, which is a activated nervous system, is because we're not feeling safe. We feel like I have to go, I have to, I have to survive, I have to make it happen. And when we learn how to feel at peace with our lives now, physiologically, that has a great impact on our nervous system and shifts it from that sympathetic fight or flight to the parasympathetic rest and digest, also known as feed or breed, which makes sense because I guess when we are in a parasympathetic nervous system, we are more lubricated, which is ideal for conception.
Okay,
Yeah, it's pretty cool, hey?
that is.
Yeah. And then another big takeaway that I want women to really receive is that you don't have to get pregnant in order to get pregnant. I was a raging perfectionist, and I had no idea that I was that, because I could like go out without makeup, or my house didn't have to be perfect. I thought a perfectionist meant like you always needed to look perfect. And no, perfectionist means that anything less than like 100% you consider a fail. Like you have such high standards of yourself, and you've been conditioned to be this way based on upbringing and conditioning and cultural conditioning. So when you were young, chances are you got a lot of love and praise when you did really well and when you were the best. And you did not receive a lot of love. And you may have even received criticism when you were not having a great day or when you were just not in the mood. And so we're human beings and we can't control that. We have ebbs and flows, particularly females, right? Men have that 24-hour hormone cycle. They get a shot of cortisol in the morning that gets them going. And we just have this slow rise where we just are waking up. And we have these ebbs and flows, and the fertility journey taught me common humanity, which essentially means that we all go through hard in life. We all go through and move through difficult experiences. And it's not about preventing that. It's not about, disassociating from that experience. It's not about toxic positivity to, pretend that it didn't happen and just manifest a new future. It is really about knowing that the experiences, the emotions, the pain, the grief that you're experiencing, everyone goes through that. Everyone goes through that at one point in their life. It's so funny because shame, what its message is you got to hide, right? But everyone has shame. Every single person in this entire world has the really disruptive, kind of poisonous feeling of shame, right? Shame is so intense. It's like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like that's a hard one. But when you learn everyone has that, you kind of realize, okay, this is part of that human experience that I came here to move through. And knowing that makes me feel a lot less angry at myself for having this.
Yeah.
So it really teaches you how to offer yourself compassion in the whole cascade of emotions that we came here to feel, which I think is really new in the fertility world. I think that the fertility industry is really damaging a lot of women by saying, just do everything perfect. Just have the perfect diet, the perfect thoughts, the perfect routine, the perfect lifestyle, and then you'll get pregnant. And that's just not reality. And it just leads to more blame and shame. And so offering a way to respond to yourself in these difficult times and these uncomfortable emotions is so, it offers so much grace that makes you feel like you don't have to control things anymore. And I know a lot of women trying to conceive are like, oh, I'm a control freak. And I understand that, but there is a healthy sense of control you can have over this fertility journey by learning how to respond to yourself in the good and the bad times. And then another thing that if I were to do 3 takeaways and just what I'm feeling, there's a lot, but what I'm feeling called to share right now is to embrace the uncertainty. I think that we have been guided to believe that we need full belief that it's going to happen, and we need to have certainty that it's going to happen this month, otherwise it won't happen. And that is the complete opposite of my experience and so many of my clients, because in the acceptance and the embrace of uncertainty, which is essentially a feeling of, I don't know, like, I don't know exactly why it hasn't happened. Maybe I have an inkling, or I have an idea, or I don't know when it's going to happen. Like that acceptance and reaching that state, which I believe can actually be initially guided through the mind, but then felt truly inside of the body, that embrace of uncertainty and that willingness to not know. For me, it was like the alchemy I needed to shift, ironically, into more certainty. And I'm learning about paradoxes, which is so, there's so many spiritual paradoxes, right? Like, how do you create change? Well, you accept yourself. It's like, well, what the heck? Like, that is such a what? But these paradoxes get you out of your head and into your body. And so for me, in the embrace of uncertainty and not needing all the answers, not needing to know everything on my fertility journey, it led to a discontent, or sorry, a content feeling. It took the discontent and it led to this feeling of content that I don't need to know. I don't need to know everything. And in that came this trust that life would work in my favor. I was at the mercy of life. Clearly, I had learned that after everything that I had gone through on an 8-year fertility journey. But I could tell through a lot of evidence, and I'm sure everyone has that evidence in their lives, that life was working in my favor. And that there might be something bigger brewing that is ready for me when I finally settle into not needing to know everything with this limited human brain that I have. I could surrender to something bigger. And so in that acceptance of uncertainty, it ironically yielded more certainty in my life, which led to the conception of my baby. So it's so amazing to have that life experience where you're like, I don't need to know everything. Oh my God. While simultaneously having this trust that everything really is always working out for you. And as cheesy as that sounds, my God, I mean, Albert Einstein said that the biggest choice you can make in this lifetime is whether the universe is friendly or whether it's hostile. Because it doesn't even matter what's in front of you. Your brain will have this bias and you'll morph it into whatever it is that you perceive.
Isn't that incredible?
It's crazy. So it's like, actually, what happens physically, like, you will see whatever you want. It doesn't even matter what physically is in front of you, because we're all kind of hallucinating within our bias.
Yeah.
It's insane. So if we can learn to perceive our fertility journeys in a way that you don't back away and resist, but instead lean in and trust, that's where the shift begins. That's where the momentum to baby, you start to feel it building within you, and you can you're almost to the point where you're like, okay, I know it's not physically here yet, but I can feel that it is just around the corner. And that does happen. And it's when we connect inside of us, it's when we are able to move within.
I really love that your approach is so deep. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not about the control. It's not about you need to do X, Y, and Z. You really get to the root, and
Yes.
it's something that does, like you mentioned before, it does pour over into all the other areas of your life. So not only do you get what you've been hoping for and praying for, but other areas of your life are also going to become more aligned because you are addressing those root emotions that are behind this block.
So true. Like, and if you can view it from that perspective, it's just like you just melt into it, right? You surrender into it. Not only just you, but your body does too. It's like, okay, we're okay here. And yeah, I still copy and paste it into every category of my life right now, right? I know how easy it is to get caught up in doing and adding in that masculine energy of hustle culture. But the only time I've ever created big change is that retreat inward. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's exactly it.
Mhm. I have a final question I ask at the end, but before I ask it, what does the future of fertility look like?
Ooh, this. Everything we just talked about. That's such a beautiful question. I believe that another word for fertility is life,
Mm,
right? It's how you do life. How are you doing life is how you do fertility. And she is, because I like to see her as this being, this entity. She's she is showing you a life bigger than you could have ever imagined. I could have never imagined where my life would be. I just wrote a book. Like I didn't know that that would happen, but it did because I listened to the energy and to the essence and the truth of my fertility journey, right? Yeah, the future of fertility is this, everything we just talked about, coming back to ourselves, connecting internally with what it is that creates life. Think about fertility. It's what creates life, literally. Like that's kind of a big deal, right? And that begins with the life we have with ourselves and creating and cultivating that deeper intimacy with ourselves.
yes. My final question for you today, what is your number one health tip? Whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
That you'll never find what you're looking for outside of you. Like you have all of the answers in that connection inside of you. Like I think that we're so caught up in like the teacher, the guru, the person who's going to save us or that something that is going to like show us the way. But in my book, like chapter 9 is what is your message from fertility? Like it's my ultimate goal is for the women I work with to build this trust within themselves so they don't feel like they need something outside of them in order to be saved. Because when we have our own backs, like we feel safe to move through life. We feel safe to take up space. And that's what I want all women to know and to do.
Yes.
Mhm.
Beautiful, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Where can people find your book? Could you possibly show us?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy
And
to.
and where can the listeners
Yeah.
go to learn more, maybe work with you, buy the book?
Yeah, Amazon. Just search on Amazon Fertile Ground and it'll get sent to you the next day. And you can go on Instagram at Spenser Brassard or my website, www.spenserbrassard.com, and learn how to work with me. So I have a 6-month group coaching program. I find the group environment to be, I mean, just showing up to a group after you've been living in the isolation and shame of the fertility journey is so healing. It's just like happens the minute you see you're not the only one struggling. And on those weekly coaching calls, I coach women through any of the resistance that's coming up, what's coming up in their bodies that they feel needs to be released or rewired within their brains or connected and rooted inside of their bodies. yeah, you develop an incredible connection with another community of women who are taking a very similar approach to conceiving their babies, which, I mean, come on,
Sisterhood.
it's this sisterhood. And like, that's the craziest thing. I think people are most afraid of the group component before joining. And then they leave saying it was their favorite part. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Spencer. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy and excited to get to be a part of this journey and sharing all of your wisdom and this information and getting your book out there to even more people. So thank you so much for joining the Heal Within podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. You had such great questions and you're a really great listener. I could feel like you were just present. And so I love that. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
Of course, and you are very easy to listen to.